Media Essential Workers. I'm very pleased to be joined by my counterpart as Vice President of Nabet, but on the beautiful coast of California. This is Joe Ayala, who's the Vice President of Nabet Local 53. And the topic of today's conversation that I think it's very apropos, is that the word apropos, Joe? Apropos?
Sure, works for me.
We're talking about the intersection of labor, what it is that Joe, myself, and many of our members are out there fighting for, our working conditions, wages, hours, and just everything that we, fight for to make sure that our families are well taken care of and that we have good, safe working conditions. The people who do that also, Nabet CWA in general has encouraged us to get these postcards out to remind our members, hey, register to vote. It's not so important, it's not a partisan issue, it's a voting issue. These are our rights. And Joe is actually joining us because I wanted to talk about, Joe, you're a labor leader, right? You're a vice president. You've made it a point to fight for your members, but you're taking on something else as well. Tell us why.
Well, I am a labor leader. I've been doing this. I've been active in as a political, environmental, and social justice activist for over 20 years. But I was elected to vice president of my union 10 years ago as a full-time position. I've been reelected 3 times since then. I'm still the vice president of my union. I'm going to continue to be the VP of my union, but I am also running for mayor. And there's a reason why I'm doing that. I've been politically active for a while, not just in many arenas. If you're in labor, you're not just doing one thing. Most of us are doing, as I said before, environmental, social justice, and labor. It's kind of a mixed bag of things, but it's about building coalitions, which is what we do in the labor movement. We learn to work with others and try and get them to get on board with what our needs are, and we get on board with what their needs are. It's about getting unity, which is what we do as labor activists, as unionists. So why I'm running for office is simple. I want first of all, there's 2 reasons, and maybe it's not quite so simple, but the first reason is obviously I live in a community that I believe needs leadership. Right now, we don't have. Well, it's a long story, and I can get into that later. But right now, obviously, when somebody runs for office, it's not just because they feel like they wake up in bed one day and they say, "Oh, I feel like doing something fun today. Let's go run for mayor."
I understand it's a lot of strain, not only on the candidate, but their family, everyone they care and love for. Just like stepping up in the union, right? It's not a job you take easy. It's not a job that's a popularity contest. It's a job that you do because you see how you envision things should go, and you try to step up for your beliefs.
As a leader, you have to make hard decisions sometimes, but you should never be afraid to explain those decisions to people because it's part of what you do. I mean, people elect. As I said, I haven't been reelected 3 times because I'm a terrible leader. The members like me, and there's a reason why they like me. They trust me. They know that I'm going to work for them. They know that I spend hours on the phone speaking to them. I said something the other day about one of the things. The only thing you've got to worry about as far as being a labor leader is not getting any sleep anymore. Spending countless hours on the phone, talking to members, and sometimes holding their hands just to make sure that everything's okay. Reaching out and that follow through is so important because that's what people need. Not members, just people in general. And that's kind of what parlays itself into doing this, higher office.
Sure, you want to hear something funny? I got to tell you something funny.
What's that?
You just popped it in my mind. I remember this one time I was in the stall at work in the bathroom, and I get a knock on the stall. I kid you not. Imagine you're sitting there, you get a knock on the stall, and I get a question about a contract. I mean, that I think is the type of, like you said, availability that needs to be out there because, again, people, I make a joke, but these are questions that affect people's lives, and they want to make sure that they get the answers. And I kid you not when I say it can be a 24-hour job.
I can't tell you how many 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning phone calls. I mean, it will be on. I'm not saying they're calling me at 1 o'clock, but sometimes it'll go into the wee hours. And over sometimes there are very complicated issues that we have to really try and find what all the different angles are and find some kind of resolution to especially COVID is a new thing, fairly new. It's only been around for a little over 6-7 months now, but we've had issues in the labor movement for decades. And simple issues, member issues, where somebody's not getting treated fairly at work. There's a violation of the contract, and members don't know how to deal with it. Now it's more difficult than ever for a member to speak up in the workplace. There's a new decision that I'm sure you're aware of. This new decision that came down that said, those protections that were afforded to unions are no longer there anymore in regards to speaking out. If you say something that management views as confrontational or you're inflammatory, they can take action, which they never could do that before. This is the current world that we live in. Unfortunately, our labor rights are getting eroded on a daily basis, and one of the reasons why I decided to run for mayor was because I felt that our voice is so small now, and the people that are supposed to be supporting us in a public office, and I've done this many times because as I said before, I've been a political activist for a really long time, and I've stood behind people, I've canvassed, I've precinct walked, I've phone banked till I couldn't talk anymore, and all for the sake of getting somebody elected who I believed in. And then that person gets elected and they turn around and they're like, what's your name again? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the, you know what? Thanks for that. I really can't help you with this issue, man. It's just complicated in the States. Somebody else's problem. It's really not mine. That is the kind of, and so that needs to change. And then speaking for labor, that's almost a non-issue with most electeds. I mean, we talk about how, and if people listen, I don't want to get political here, but I am running for office. But we talk about how
I do just want to put out there that Media Central workers were all about getting the story out there, and the reason to have Joe on there is to talk about the intersectionality of labor and politics. We don't endorse anyone, and again, I like Joe, but I can't in good conscience endorse him on this forum. But I do want to find out about what makes people step up to be expansive in what they do in representing people. And on Joe, on that note, I'll throw it back to you.
Well, that's where I was going. The reason I stepped up to do this is because I feel that the voice of labor is diminished so greatly over the last 70 years that we're currently in just a gigantic deficit, and it shows. But you look at the working class of this country, the middle class of this country has shrunk to an all-time low. Our biggest employers now are Amazon and Hobby Lobby and Walmart, and minimum wage jobs, underemployed jobs. That was the big tout of we're a fully employed workplace. Well, yeah, we're fully employed. There's just nobody making any money. In the days of industrialization, we had GM, we had Ford, we had big middle class jobs, real good union jobs, industrial jobs in this country that filled a lot of the role. Automation took a lot of that away. Bad trade deals took a lot of that away. It's currently impacting our own sector, Raza, and I'm sure you're aware of this. You look at automation and how downsizing has occurred, and people blame. I should say people. Management tends to want to blame. Corporations tend to want to blame all these things on efficiency and flexibility. They love to say those words. It's a wonderful way of saying we just don't need you. We've got a cheaper robot that can do it for nothing. It's the John Henry Railroad story all over again. But it's not true because there's literally a need, especially in my wheelhouse. I'm a TV director by trade. And I have had issues recently where management is coming up to our frontline people, our directors, and saying, hey, you made a mistake on the air. Well, the guy's not using a standard system anymore. He's using an automated system that is very complicated, and it requires so many different pieces to come together to make sure that it works. Have you used APC? Doesn't anybody know what that is? Automated production control.
I have used it, and we have people who can weigh in here. Feel free to weigh in. Feel free to ask questions. But yes, we have used it. I have trained myself as a technical director. So I'm familiar. There's coding. There's on behind the scenes, correct?
I was actually the beta test person for Ross when they first came in.
That's not usually an envious position to be in, is it?
Not, especially not. Are you kidding? Every other week there was an upgrade, and then there was a downgrade right after that because the upgrade literally, froze the system. It broke it. It was like fire coming out of the back and smoke. It looked like a Keystone Cops movie. But
it basically translates to my guys in minicam who are out in the field. When all of a sudden you get an upgrade thing, you try to ignore it, and then you blue screen anyways. But here, I imagine, Joe, it's happening right before your newscast. So hey,
it's happening during the newscast. It's happening. It happens all the time. So we had an issue recently where there was a person who took a source on air That source was covered up by a graphic. The graphic's supposed to expand out, and then it opens to video. Well, the person that was in charge of this, the one that's supposed to send the video, and I'm not going to be naming names here because it's not fair, but didn't do that. And so, unfortunately, the director had no way to tell. He only had one. There was only one way he could have told it, and the system lately got an upgrade, or just recently got an upgrade. So that was like a deletion or an addition. I can't remember which one of the two it was, but he didn't see that. And so when he took it, the graphic was there. It opened up to black, right? And then we stayed on black for about 5 seconds, and then the guy went to the next thing. And those are the kind of issues and he's getting in trouble for that. There was an actual meeting, a disciplinary meeting or an investigatory meeting over this about, really it was on you. You should have checked all that. How come you didn't look at that? Like we're not doing anything else in the middle of a news. By the way, this is the weather segment going into sports.
Yeah. There's no complexity of transitions or actions going on then. I was just having my coffee, right?
Yeah, I'm just I was kicking back watching the Hogan's Heroes reruns, and it was a nice episode. The one where Schultz says, "I don't know anything, I know nothing," or something like that. But anyway, getting back to what I was doing. So why I decided to do this in the first place was because I felt that there was a need in my community for leadership. There wasn't that is sorely lacking, unfortunately. Simi Valley is a very conservative city. It's one of the 18th. It was ranked in 2005 as the 18th most conservative city in the country. Our claim to fame is the Rodney King trials, and Ronald Reagan is buried like 5 miles from me. So the museum is here. And unfortunately, though, there is a racist reputation in the city, and it's ill-deserved in some ways, but leadership is very slow to respond to that. And there's been a movement. Obviously, everybody knows about Black Lives Matter, and it is a very integral movement in moving forward in our society, and something that I stand behind. I think that there is systemic racism. Racism is a thing. I'm from Laredo, Texas. I was born in a small town with all my friends were Hispanic, and most of my family was Hispanic. I take that back. All of my family was Hispanic. Most of my friends were Hispanic. That's the better way to say it. But when I moved from there, and we moved around quite a bit as a youngster. My dad was coming back from Vietnam, and we were moving around quite a lot. I did experience that type of attitude among some people, and it's just inevitable that people are going to think that way in some ways. It's avoidable, but I think that people don't. We tend to be selfish as humans, and we don't look out for other people a lot of times, and that's something that needs to change. And I speak for that as well. That's why social justice is so important to our movement, because again, like the three wheelhouses of social, environmental, and labor justice, they're so intrinsically tied together that with one, and especially the voice of labor, because it's at the top, it's the one that drives everything else. And if we're not active, if we're not moving forward and trying to make change, good, positive change, not just all change begins at home. I could run for, I couldn't run for president. I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire. It'd be difficult to run it's very difficult to run for assembly or for state senate, because you have to be wealthy. There's a lot of fundraising. My campaign's all on small dollar donations. I'm running a Bernie Sanders style campaign, really. And it is very much that way in some ways, because I do have a huge engagement from the youth of the city and from the disaffected people, because I think we also make mistakes about, as like Democrats and Republicans, whoever you may be, we think that our party is it in this country, and that's not the truth anymore. There is a very, very large independent section of people that don't, non-party preference voters who won't vote one way or the other. They vote for the best person, whoever that may be. And sometimes
your race, for instance, is a municipal race, is a nonpartisan race. So, I don't think there's anything partisan. Correct me if I'm wrong about the trains running on time, sanitation, picking up your garbage on time. These are issues where you really got to come there. And some political leanings aside, you got to work together, work across the aisle in order to be efficient, just like I think you have to in the labor movement quite a bit.
I think my platform is fairly milquetoast in many ways. I'm talking about jobs, housing, and community service programs. Yes, you can take partisan positions on either one of them, I suppose. Everybody works for a living. Well, let's put it this way. 99% of us actually work for a living. Maybe 98%. A lot of people work for a living. And of those people that work for a living, they want what everybody wants: to be comfortable, to be able to afford to provide for their family, to have something they can rely on in their later years, such as retirement, a 401k plan, a pension, whatever that may be. They want health care that they can count on. They want a place to live that is, that's not going to be besieged by debt collectors. And, it's just simple. They're not complicated asks. They can be made complicated by using, what I like to call some of my policy wonk friends overly complicated jargon to over-explain the situation. I have a friend of mine who was talking about racism. He goes, racism finds there are so many different avenues of racism, and you can. I'm like, I get it. I understand that. I took psychology. I understand what you're saying, but if you try and speak over the average voter's head, you lose them at hello. You have to speak to them, not over them. And so not everybody understands all those things. It's normal not to understand all those things. It's complicated. These are complicated situations that if you don't study these things, you may not be aware of them or not, are not educated about them. And you'll take a position a lot of times on that, an uninformed position, because you may have seen something on, I don't know, MSNBC or Fox News or CNN, whatever. You saw it on Media Essential Workers. No, I'm just kidding.
Hopefully this is where you're getting that news.
No,
but
I think this is where you get the real news.
Joe, one thing I do want to ask you is a lot of people, like you said, don't understand certain issues of what's going on or of the fight. I want to lend some clarity into, as your role as vice president of Nabet chapter. It's full-time there. It's not. I'm part-time in my local. So it's very distinct in terms of the obligations. But walk us through a typical day. Joe Ayala wakes up this morning. He wants to serve his members. What do you do today? Tell me what your day consisted of. What were you doing before you jumped on this show?
I wake up in the morning and I exercise. The very first thing I do, because I got to get myself centered. So I do a lot of my first thing in the morning is to take care of myself. So I'll do a little exercise, drink a cup of coffee, turn on nowadays with COVID, I turn on my laptop. I get ready for my first meetings, which are going to be pretty much all day long. My phone is on. We're, a lot of times we're part of being an administrator is you're not just representing the members, you're also administrating to the needs of the local, which means making sure that you're financially solvent, making sure that you have the staff required to do the jobs needed in the course of that day, making sure that your filings are done on time as far as, when you're going to be sending out letters to the membership, or right now we're making a change with some of our in some of our contracts. We're adding new language to it. So when you do that, you have to go and you have to proof that language, and that requires a lot of rigor.
I'm going to ask you this, though. During this pandemic, our workflow has quite a bit changed, very significantly changed in terms of what our members are dealing with and our obligation to represent them. I'm sure also has changed the way we negotiate, right? We're no longer meeting in those rooms and hammering out things. Is this part of the calls that you have, the laptop work? How has this changed and how have you adapted with it? Because I think that's a lot, how quickly you can adapt to changing challenges.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, in our movement, adaptation is slow coming, and so with any kind of institution, change is not always instantaneous. So we've learned to adapt, and that's one of the good things. We were one of the first locals to start immediately getting on Zoom and reaching out to the companies that way. We bought our own Zoom account.
It's funny. I was proposing it for 2 years before the pandemic, but again, certain situations happen that really demand that change, and like you said, that's when the change comes.
Yeah, you have to get into it quick. And I'll tell you what I don't like, which is even easier than saying what I do like. What I don't like is having to do this, having to have this kind of interaction with people and not being able to be in there and not being next to each other. I will say what I do like is the exact same thing, because you and I, Raza, could never have this without Zoom, right? You live in Chicago, I live in Los Angeles, and we talk to each other on the phone sometimes, but we're busy. We both live busy lives, and it's kind of nice and refreshing to be able to have this kind of and I know that FaceTime existed before and all those things, but now that we're kind of forced into this world, it's kind of been nice in that way. What's bad about virtual meetings, in negotiations, in disciplinary meetings or investigatory meetings, is that one of the things that I like to do is to have breakout sessions. It's very important to be able to say, look, we're in negotiations, things aren't going well. we need to take a break, and I need to move this meeting out of the room. Okay, so to do that it's a chore. Okay, you've got to like basically stop the meeting, right? Everybody logs out.
You almost need to have two different laptops. You need to have your second Zoom account going where you can sidebar, but these are the challenges you don't think about.
We have people who do that. It's because it's absolutely necessary. Nowadays, the only way you can really do a fluid breakout session is to have two different instances, or you can have, I don't think you can have two instances of Zoom going at the same time on two different, on the same computer. But I've done this where I'll have my one Zoom meeting on my laptop, and I'm having another Zoom meeting on my phone. And I'm like, it's the most confusing thing in the world, but it is something that we've had to learn to adapt to. But it's also another thing that happens with investigatory meetings or with disciplinary meetings. It was really nice to be able to sit next to the member. I mean, sit right next to the member. And when he or she started saying way too much, over-explaining, and getting themselves in deep over something that was probably not a problem at the beginning, I'd love to be able to grab them here and go, hey, that's enough. You've said it.
Now it's more like texting them, please stop.
I am like, and sometimes I don't have their number. So it's like, I'm just looking at them going, and I'm trying to write in the chat, but it's just not, you can't do that. So unfortunately, that's kind of one of it's a detriment to good representation. But having said that, we're busier than ever because of COVID. There are many, I'm sure this has affected your local as much as it has anybody else. There's been a lot of shifts in the workflow. We have members who have been displaced. We have members who are currently waiting to come back to work. There is thank goodness there is an uptick in the work now. And so we're seeing the work return. But it's slow.
We were talking about earlier, and actually one of the reasons we started this is our sports freelancer, their industry was pretty much decimated when all of this started. And initially, the same forum we're using now is how we did unemployment seminars and kind of told them how to go about filing. And there's a lot psychologically to be said about when people are talking to people that they used to work with, their coworkers, and sometimes this technology enables that. But yeah, very much to your point, a lot of our people were affected. Luckily, sports have picked up and is going in the right direction, but there are still a lot of people waiting to get back.
It is. It is happening still, and there's a lot of other things going on in our local. I mean, I'm sure I'm not out of school saying this because it's common knowledge, but that we, for instance, one of our youth bargaining units, Fox Sports, or I should say, it was called Fox Network Engineering and Operations, was recently bought by Disney. And so it's happened about a year and a half ago. And in the course of that sale, it was very strange the way they bought what parts of the company they bought, what parts of the company they didn't buy. They basically bought the Marvel franchise and they bought NE&O, which is their broadcast distribution hub, and a few other cable things as well. And so, but the way that they distributed the workflow amongst the members was very strange. They took all the guys who worked at Fox wound up moving over to, basically they worked in broadcast, became Disney employees as servicing the Fox unit. I never understood why they did that, and it never made any sense to me. I asked them, and they were still they didn't understand why it was that way, or they weren't willing to tell me. Let's put it that way. So, because of that, and because of the fact that there's also an impending move of some of the work from Los Angeles to Arizona, to Tempe, Arizona, where obviously they're moving it because it's minimum wage jobs in Tempe versus good union jobs here in Los Angeles, and they're gonna lay the automation at the foot of that. They're gonna say, well, it's easier now with the advent of the cloud. There's a big push for the cloud, right? Everybody's talking about the cloud nowadays, and 5G, and how much that's going to be so much easier for workflow, and we can really streamline the operations. But again, now we're going to those words: streamlining, efficiencies, flexibility. Well, they're all code words for diminishing returns for workers.
Well, and so a couple people have asked about that. What is the union doing to protect our bargaining agreements and TV stations when they're not abided by? Someone else asked, jobs are being combined. This is something that we deal with across the country. Again, if you're just joining us now, Joe Ayala, Nabet CWA 53. out of LA, beautiful LA. I'm in Chicago, Nabet Local 41 Vice President. This is a good chance for us to dialogue and really get for us to introduce ourselves to kind of everyone watching. But we do want to kind of talk about how do we deal with challenges like that? Because clearly, like you said, things are being streamlined. Economic decisions are being made, sometimes really skirting what our contract would allow, or if not, just completely going over. I'm sure that keeps you busy.
If there's a, well, of course it does. I mean, that's why I'm in office. There's people who do, I mean, there's always some manager or some company policy change that directly violates the contract or indirectly violates the contract in some way, or is a fringe violation of the contract. I have one of our bargaining units has a provision that says they can use supplemental video, right? For certain things. And so they do. And our members are all, and here's the other thing too. I tried to tell this to the members. Well, let me finish this story. And so they do. And so sometimes members will call me and they say, they're violating the contract because they're throwing in this video that we didn't do. And then I'll say, well, they can. Oh, you're a terrible, I mean, this is two guys. So you don't want to represent us. Is that what it is? Because it's like, no, it actually says in the contract that supplemental video can be used for our work. This is my bargaining unit, by the way. It's my shop.
Yeah.
And so I tell the guys, I go, so read the contract where it says they can do that. You don't like that to exist? Let's change it. And the way you do that is you negotiate. What's required to negotiate a contract is like anything else. You have to have member support. I'm a pretty good negotiator, I think. I pat myself on the back now and then, but I can't do anything by myself. It requires, I mean, every person that works in the bargaining unit needs to step up. I need to, I mean, not just them. I need to do, I mean, I do my part. I'll do coalition building. I'll do outreach to other unions to bring them in. I'll reach out to the County Federation of Labor, all the things that you're supposed to do as a leader. But the one thing that you really can't do is make everybody get off their butts and go out there and represent the contract and fight for their rights. They have to, a person has to want to do that. They have to take risks. They have to be willing to go out on the street and stand up to a person that's paying them, which is really a kind of a, I can understand the kind of a mixed allegiances there, because, you know, first of all, you've got a job there. And also within our union, there's always the issue of I've made this, and I'm totally willing to say this, is we sometimes do ourselves a disservice as a local, by the way that, or as a union, by the way we bring in new members. It's the best way to talk to somebody is to have a conversation. The best way to get somebody to kind of be your friend is to say, hi, how's it going? My name's Joe. How you doing? What are you up to? You don't want to throw a, hi, I'm Joe, and here's a bill. Because it definitely sets you off right away. The first thing you see is like, what? I just got a job here. Now I owe money? Well, you know, so you have to, but that comes with education. We need to be able to explain to our members. We have education programs within Nabet, within CWA. And I find that most of them are tech programs. They're, you know, how can I be a better editor? How can I be a better photographer? How can I be a better mixer? Whatever. What we don't see a whole lot of, and something you kind of have to reach out on your own to do, is how do I become a better unionist? How do I find out what is it? Why am I even paying dues? What's the purpose of this union? What does it mean to me? Because I get that question asked a lot, and I'm like, guys, these are all avenues of information that you can seek out anytime you want to. I'm happy to answer those questions. But I think what we need to do is actually, as a union, as a movement, is we need to bring that education system into the local level, at the district level, at the state level, at the national level, to make sure that members who come into Nabet, members who come into IBEW is really good at this, by the way. I've spoken to I have a friend of mine.
A lot of building trades, because intrinsically, when they have apprenticeship programs, they're investing in the members, exactly. Whereas a lot of times it's not our workflow necessarily.
They're very successful at that. I was at an IBEW facility down in Wilmington here in Los Angeles, and I was so impressed by their campus, because it's not just a tech campus. I mean, it is a gigantic tech campus. You can learn air conditioning, you can learn, you know, electrical work, that kind of thing. That is the electrical, you know, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. That's exactly what they're called. But one of the things that I was really fascinated by was the fact that they have a labor camp there, a labor training school, where they teach them new members, interns, people in the internship program and the apprenticeship program, what it is they're fighting for. Why are they even paying dues? What is this organization that they belong to, and what's their role in it? You know, and I've talked to these guys. They're very, very knowledgeable about their union, about the union, the big U, and that's one of the things. It requires a little bit of work. I know a lot of guys don't want to go back to school. You know, we already did our 4 years, and you know, whatever. We had our high school, we had our college, whatever level of education you reached. And it's
good to know what you're entitled to, right? Because here's one of the things, Joe, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this. As journalists, we're sometimes told, you know what, you have to be neutral. You have to not get involved. But I think sometimes that precludes the obligation that as union members, we have every right to fight for our wages, hours, working conditions. I know, for instance, in Illinois, there was a big thing about cameras in the courtroom, and I was very active about fighting to have cameras in the courtroom. Again, as a journalist, I can see the value in that transparency. You probably are not going to have a politician that thinks to himself, you know what, I want to make sure to lobby for this and fight for it. There are, I believe, certain avenues where we have to, even as journalists, say, hey, for the cause, for what we value as important to getting the information out there, there's things worth fighting for, and especially as a union journalist.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if I considered myself a journalist today, I wouldn't be able to run for office. And the reason I say that is because while I have 35 years of experience as a television news director, technical director, you know, I worked my way up. I was a videotape operator when I first started in the business. I didn't start off. I wasn't born a director. And so, you know, all that experience that I've gained has given me some kind of insight, and that, you know, because we do get all that raw information that the average viewer doesn't get. And I always try to explain this to my friends. It's the most frustrating thing in the world to have this kind of political arguments with folks who actually do what I do. Because I'm like, guys, you should know better. You got all the same info as me. How come nobody figured this out? I'm not the smartest guy here. I know I'm not the smartest guy here. But yet I have to have these discussions sometimes. I think that true neutrality is really kind of, it's very hard to come by. I think everyone takes positions of some sort. And even as journalists, while we try and be impartial, and our goal is to report the facts, there are so many media outlets now that are basically pundits that say, you know, it's left, it's right, it's left, it's right, it's nothing, I don't know what it is. And so and I've seen this, it's become insane because of cable. You have, I mean, on my DirecTV channel, I think I have 100 news. Oh, no, I take it back. There's 50 different news things, and then sub-channels to those. And I mean, every one of them, some of them are just regular old news, you know, CNN and NBC and that stuff. And then there's like, there's Free Speech TV, and there's like, you know, there's One America News. There's every one of these things, but a lot of them, almost exclusively, every single one of them are pundit news. They're not news. News is, it's sunny outside right now, guys, and I'm a little warm. Those are the facts.
It's almost like the editorial section has taken over the front page, and now you're left to wonder, you know, what's the pure facts to this matter, and where's the skew coming in?
And it's not a new concept, to be perfectly honest with you. I would love to think that this just sprang up with, you know, a lot of people love to blame Donald Trump for everything, but I'm not one of those guys. There's a lot of things I can blame on a whole lot of other people. And I'll tell you that because there's a history to this. It's not a new thing. We have been, you know, the fact is that all media in the United States is owned by 6 corporations. That's not look it up. It's true. And so, you know, Sinclair Broadcasting now is buying up, you know, dozens. I mean, what am I saying? Hundreds of local media outlets, and they have a very conservative spin on their in their newscast, and they fashion themselves as local news entities. So when you're getting a certain type of spin on something, it's, you know, don't want to quote Joseph Goebbels, but what did he say? A lie told enough times becomes the truth. And so it's unfortunate that and it's not necessarily that they're lies. They're kind of manipulations of the truth. It skirts the actual, it's maybe not the entire, it's not a full on lie. It's kind of less of my take on this is not necessarily like, you know, it's just a spin. It's a spin.
Well,
But I think we can do better than that as media. We can do better than that.
one of the books that really kind of gave me some insight was Three Blind Mice. I don't know if you ever read that, Joe, but basically talking about, like you talked about, corporatization is very instrumental and paramount now in ownership in the media. And again, what is the goal of a corporation? Value for their shareholders. And again, it talks about at some points how NBC always, for instance, viewed news as almost the gem that couldn't be touched. But over the course of time, it becomes subject to financial scrutiny like every other department. And they're not alone in that. It seemed to echo in multiple different companies. But it's always important to realize that, like you said, this is corporate news at some level.
Well, there's that. There's the influence of unfortunately politics plays a role in this, and this is where you have to look to the FCC, the deregulated FCC. It's a I don't know. It's an entity in name only in some ways, because we've given so many rights up to them, or they've given up so many of our American rights of viewership, and what was considered to be, well, for instance, now, and this has been going on for a while. It's not a brand new thing. You can actually broadcast in the United States and call it local. You can say, well, it's local news, but it's not actually even being done here. It's being done in another country. The FCC has made that it's possible to do that now. There's no oversight on that. There's no regulation towards that. So we have an issue with one of our local TV stations who decided to pack up shop. They kept the building, and they're renting it out. They're doing shows there and stuff like that, but they're not broadcasting from there, or they're repeating from there. But all the news people were let go. Everybody who worked there was let go, and they moved the operation to Monterrey, Mexico. And we've been fighting them, and we just finally wound up. We won an arbitration. Then they took it back, and they wanted to make it to define the arbitration award, and it wound up being actually, in my opinion, it was a loss. But that's because companies and corporations have so much more power now, because the law gives them the right to do that. Citizens United making you a corporation a person is absolutely ludicrous. The fact that we can think of somebody, GE as being a human being that has every right to influence our elections is absolutely crazy. So, it is part of the problem. One of the things that led me to what I'm doing now. One of the reasons why I was so active, not just, as I said, in the labor movement, because that I feel that we need a voice in labor to speak for our own members, because I am a member. I'm not just as the hair club guy says, and I don't have very much of that. So, as the hair club guy says, not just a member, I'm also the vice president. With that comes a lot of responsibility to my memberships, but I didn't do that. I mean, I think activism is not necessarily born, or being somebody who wants to live a life of public service is not necessarily something you're born with. You kind of learn that. My stepdad was a really very active person. He was a person who always was I would call a volunteer type mentality. He joined the army in Vietnam. He came back, and he was he became a policeman back home in my hometown. After he retired from that, he wound up becoming basically an activist or a counselor for multiple programs that he founded or helped found in our hometown to help, anti-recidivism programs, a drug counseling program. These were all funded by the county and the state, with almost no money spent from the city. They just had to, the building was there, and they just basically used all the resources to that building were funded by the county and the state. And that was in Laredo. And my dad was, he did a veterans oversight committee. He created that because obviously his wheelhouse, his heart of hearts is in supporting veterans. So all of these things he did. He's a conservative person. He's a Republican. He's very, I think he's one of my heroes. And I'm lucky. I've got two dads, and I've got two heroes in that way. But I've got more than a couple. I don't really claim heroes easily, but these people earned my respect in so many different ways, and I kind of wanted to live up to that. So as a youngster, I didn't necessarily have a ton of direction, as most of us don't. But there was always something in my heart that wanted to do more for people. So
So,
That's
Joe,
what
we
I'm
got
doing. What I'm doing now.
minutes here, but there's a couple of topics I do want to touch
Yeah.
upon because I know you're pretty busy running for mayor. So I do thank you for taking the time to talk to us. But one of the things I
Sure.
wanted to talk about is going from being a labor leader to getting into this race. I'm sure you're drawing on the support of a lot of other labor movements, a lot of other labor people. Talk about the solidarity in terms of getting working men and women from other trades to help you and support what it is that you're doing.
Well, thank you for asking. That's a good question. Part of running for office, if anybody has ever done that on this call, is getting endorsements. An endorsement is basically it's praise. It's a show of trust by an organization, and they support you. Is what they're saying. Well, that comes with a lot of things. It comes with their word. It comes with their logo. It comes with their, like I said before, it comes with their trust, and it comes with money as well. I have 15 endorsements from almost every local labor organization in my area, along with the county and the near surrounding areas where that don't even actually work here in Simi Valley, but they've stepped up to support me as well. I've endorsed nationally by Our Revolution, which is a progressive movement started by Bernie Sanders. And actually, Larry Cohen, our ex-CWA president, was one of the founders of that movement. So he's actually, I think he still sits on the board. And I never knew Larry that well. And I was very very humbled that an organization that large would deem to endorse me. But they actually let me speak last night at on a Zoom call. Would have been nice if it would have been in real life, but I think I would have probably choked on my own tongue if that would have happened, because I was in the same room with Nina Turner, Ro Khanna. It was an amazing. It was about 5 or 6 people that I was really like the small fry in that world. But I was very pleased that they let me speak in front of that group of people, and it gives my campaign more leverage, more hope to win. But the getting labor endorsements, or almost because of what I do, because of who I am, my history. I pretty much just said, "Hey guys, I'm running for office," and they were calling me to say, "What can I do to support you? How much can I help you? What can I do? Where are the people that you need? What can I?" That's the movement that I have. It's not big dollars. There's no big money in this movement. Our maximum contribution for mayor of in Simi Valley is $1,000. So somebody said, "So are you taking money from big PACs?" I'm like, "Okay, it's $1,000. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to sell my soul for $1,000. I think this was like, and that's what the concerning part about big elections are, is that when you start talking about like really big PACs, really big elections, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars getting thrown to candidates, and there's promises that are asked for these contributions, and they shouldn't be. They should be the way I'm running, which is to go out and talk to people, ask them for their help. If they trust you, if they choose to stand by you, then they will. If they don't, if you've never built a name for yourself, never built any kind of credibility for yourself, and you don't have any kind of history, and you're running for office the first time, I applaud you. But you're not likely to win, and unless you've got an amazing public speaking voice. I mean, that happens, sure it does. But I think that those are the people I wouldn't want to vote for. I want to vote for somebody who's done something already.
So, Joe, actually, I'm going to try to bring this back to the local union level. What do you say to members who have listened to what you say and say, "Hey, you know what? I'd like to have a bigger voice in my local, in the labor movement, somewhere where I can directly affect and hopefully benefit the people I stand with." We see more and more daily hires, more and more freelancers. Like you said, sometimes they're scared to step up, but sometimes feel like they should be empowered to represent their people. What advice would you give to them?
Get involved, and get involved. The best thing you can do is to get educated about what your movement is. Find out ways that you can help out. It's not about you. I mean, it's about everyone. And so you have to remember that there's a certain type of personality that you want to try and cultivate if you're going to be a person that's going to want and help other people. And I think a lot of people probably on this Zoom have that. It's human nature to want to help. I think we are. You see somebody stranded on the side of the road, you want to kind of pull over and see if you can help out. If you see somebody in need, suffering, it's just human nature to want to help out. It takes a little bit more to put yourself at the front and to say, "Look, I'm not just going to help out, but I'm actually going to be here for you every time you need me." So that there's a little more responsibility, a little more commitment to that when you do that. But I say it's essential that we get more people, and then more people step up to that, because I'm 56. I plan on being around for a while longer, but I'm not going to be around forever. And Raza, you're a lot younger than I am, but you won't be around forever either. And I'm counting on guys like you, and counting on folks that are younger than you to step up and you know, fill those shoes, you know, and actually fill them better than the people who were there before you. Because a lot of times, you know, I look at myself as a leader, and I see that I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I'm not a genius by any means, and but you know, and having your heart in the right place counts for a lot. But it takes a lot more. You have to really push that work ethic. You really have to like put that effort out there every single day. If you don't do that, one's not good enough. You have to have both. You've got to have the right. It's got to be here, but it's also got to be here. You got to be here. There it is. It's got to be there too. You got to put a little bit of effort into that as well. So I say join, get involved, get educated, find out what your local needs. Look at your bargaining units, because actually I'll break it down there even better. Look at your own bargaining unit. Where's the need? What roles aren't being filled there? Do you have enough shop stewards? Is your executive board member representing you, or is he just like going to a meeting once a month to hang out and have lunch? Is your vice president or your president representing you, or are they just like, you know, lining their pockets and not really reaching out to the members? Those are questions you need to ask yourself. And if you come up with an answer you don't like, then you should
offer a solution, right? You should then offer a solution.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this: with the current climate, in terms of this is how we're able to talk, this is how the companies and negotiating committees are talking. Do you notice companies putting off negotiations, or has this actually facilitated? Give me some of your experiences.
There has been a little bit of a back and forth on that, actually. Some companies were jumping at it, you know, let's do it because it's great for us. Other companies are like, I don't know how to handle this. And it's really not companies. I want to say it's people, personalities. Okay. So one labor attorney is like, yeah, I know how to use whatever Zoom. I'll use this. I'll use that WebEx. I'll use this. And the other guy's like, I'm still figuring out like my laptop. I know how to like use my Word, but I'm not sure about how this other stuff works. So he's getting a little bit slow on getting started there. But I will say that it is commonplace nowadays. There's no one's saying, well, this is really, you know, I'm not sure if we want to do it this way. This is just the way we're doing it right now. This won't last forever. I'm optimistic, but I'm actually also realistic. You know, we're at some point going to get back to work. At some point, COVID-19 is going to be a thing that we can deal with. And hopefully we make better choices in leadership so that we can have get a hold of this like other countries have done it. Because yes, it was devastating. It is a pandemic. It was affecting many countries, but many countries have gotten a hold of this, and we're still lagging behind. So we need to figure that out. And I think I got off on a tangent there, Raza.
No, but I think the value in what you said was to let our members know that negotiations are still going on, and though it took some technology for sometimes for people to realize, you've been able to conduct your work, correct?
Yes, as I said, you know, we are using technology, whether it's our phones or whether it's our laptops and our computers, and using Zoom and as well as other virtual platforms to communicate with our members and to communicate with our shop steward meetings, for instance, are all virtual. For the moment, we are coming back. California is starting to come back to work, so when that does happen, we'll go back to the old style meetings. I kind of like the virtual meetings with the shop stewards because in some ways more people can attend. You're not as restricted by your work schedule. You know, you can pick up your phone and like, hey guys, I'm on. I wanted to chime in for a little while. And
not limited by geography either. Now you're able to participation from people who might be on a lunch or whatever else.
If anybody's aware of the geography of Los Angeles, it's a gigantic city. I mean, we're very big. I mean, we're all over the place. So if you live in Anaheim and I'm having a meeting in Burbank, that's going to take you an hour and a half, 45 minutes to get there. And it's just not convenient, you know, whereas if you live in Anaheim and I'm having a meeting in Burbank on my laptop, all you do is pick yours up and there you go. I mean, we might find at some point, I think what we're going to wind up doing is finding a hybrid version of this, which will be possibly a virtual / real-time meeting where we can have members sit in virtually while we have other members physically be there. So that might be a way for the future. I think that's something that I've been exploring that, or at least contemplating it. I haven't really been talking to anybody about it myself. You're the first person I've told. But
well, what's beneficial about that is I'm the first person, and all the people watching, and this is why I like this forum too, because as we're engaging, as you can see on the corner here, people are engaging and asking us questions. So I feel like anytime you can share information with members and empower them, it's not a wasted event. It's definitely something I feel we need to reinvent how we do.
Yep, I agree completely. And it's one of the reasons why, again, it's so important to have that member education. You get folks that learn why they're doing what they're doing, why they're paying the dues, what the purpose of the union is, what's their role as a trade unionist or as any kind of unionist. Whether you work in the building trades, or whether you work as a editor, or whether you work as a minicam operator, or whether you work as a Final Cut Pro mixer, whatever it is you do. It's all about learning why your union's important to you and why you're important to your union, because it's a reciprocal thing. It's not one. You can't have one without the other. No members, no union. No union, no members. So it's not, one doesn't exist without the other.
Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and more so in this forum where we can really get the ideas and express them and share them. Joe Ayala, thank you for joining us. Vice President of Nabet CWA Local 53 out in LA. Again, I'm Raza Siddiqui. Appreciate that you joined us. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Thank you again, Joe.
Thank you so much, Raza. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.